The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Kensington Palace as Prince William walked down the familiar corridor. His footsteps echoed softly in the quiet hallway, a sound he had grown accustomed to over the years. Different, though, was something in the air that made his heart beat a little faster. Though he couldn't quite place what it was. William had been away on a week-long royal tour of Scotland, visiting communities affected by recent flooding. The trip had been emotionally draining, meeting families who had lost everything, yet still managed to smile and wave when he arrived. Their strength had touched him deeply, reminding him once again why his royal duties meant so much to him. As he approached his private study, William noticed something unusual. The door was slightly ajar, which was strange because he always kept it locked when he was away. Mrs. Henderson, his trusted housekeeper, had strict instructions never to enter his study unless there was an emergency. The room contained his most personal belongings, family photographs, and private correspondence that he preferred to keep away from prying eyes. William paused outside the door, his hand hovering over the brass handle. He could hear soft sounds, coming from inside, almost like whispers or gentle movements. His first instinct was concern. Had someone broken in? Security at the palace was tight, but not impossible to breach. His mind raced through possibilities as he stood there, trying to decide whether to call security or investigate himself. Taking a deep breath, William decided to handle the situation personally. He had always been hands-on, preferring to face challenges directly rather than hiding behind others. Slowly, he pushed the door open wider, preparing himself for whatever he might find inside. The study looked exactly as he had left it a week ago. His mahogany desk sat in the center of the room, papers neatly organized in small piles. The leather armchair by the window remained in its usual position, and the bookshelves lined the walls just as they always had. But there was something different about the atmosphere in the room, something that made William's chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't immediately identify. As he stepped further into the room, William noticed that the morning light streaming through the tall windows seemed to illuminate something on his desk that hadn't been there before. From where he stood, he could see what appeared to be a small pile of letters tied with a blue ribbon. His heart began to race as he recognized the handwriting on the top. Envelope. The letters were addressed to him in his mother's distinctive script. Princess Diana's handwriting was something William would recognize anywhere, having treasured the few personal notes she had left for him and Harry before her death. But these letters were different. It looked fresh, as if they had been recently placed there. Yet the paper had the slightly aged quality of something that had been stored away for years. William's hands trembled slightly as he approached his desk. The room suddenly felt smaller, more intimate, as if his mother's presence had somehow filled the space. He could almost smell her favorite perfume. It's that light floral scent that had always made him feel safe and loved as a child. Next to the letters, William noticed a small leather journal that he had never seen before. It was bound in deep blue leather with golden edges, and it looked well used, as if someone had spent considerable time writing in it. His initials were embossed on the cover in elegant gold lettering, but he was certain he had never owned such. A journal. As William stood there, trying to process what he was seeing, he heard a soft sound from behind him. It was barely audible, like the rustle of fabric or the gentle clearing of someone's throat. His heart nearly stopped as he realized he was not alone in the room. Someone else was there, someone who had been waiting for him to discover these mysterious items. Slowly, William turned around, his breath catching in his throat as he prepared to face whoever had entered his private sanctuary. The morning light created silhouettes and shadows that made it difficult to see clearly, but he could make out a figure standing near the bookshelf by the far wall. The person was small and slight, wearing what appeared to be a simple dress or skirt. As William's eyes adjusted to the lighting, he began to make out more details. The figure had silver hair that caught the sunlight, and there was something familiar about the way they stood. With perfect posture and an air of quiet dignity, William's mind raced as he tried to understand what was happening. Who was this person? How had they gotten into his locked study? And most importantly, what did they know about the letters and journal that had mysteriously appeared on his desk? The figure began to move slowly toward him, and William found himself frozen in place, unable to speak or move. There was something about this moment that felt significant, as if his entire life had been leading up to this single encounter. Air in the room seemed to shimmer with possibility and emotion, and William knew that whatever happened next would change him forever. The elderly woman stepped forward into the light, and William's breath caught in his throat. She was petite, with kind eyes that sparkled with unshed tears, and her silver hair was styled in a neat bun. Despite her age, there was an elegance about her that spoke of a lifetime of grace and dignity. William had never seen her before, yet something about her presence felt oddly comforting. "Your Highness," she said softly, her voice carrying a gentle Welsh accent, "I hope you'll forgive me for entering your private study without permission. My name is Margaret Evans, and I have something that belongs to you." William found his voice, though it came out slightly hoarse with emotion. "Mrs. Evans, how did you get in here? And what are those letters on my desk?" Margaret smiled, and William noticed how her entire face lit up with warmth. "I was your mother's lady in waiting during her final years. I worked very closely with Princess Diana, and she trusted me with something very precious, something she wanted you to have when the time was right." The words hit William like a physical blow. His mother's lady in waiting. He had met most of the people who worked closely with his mother, but he didn't remember Margaret Evans. Yet there was something about her manner, the way she spoke about Diana, that convinced him she was telling the truth. "She left those letters for you and Prince Harry," Margaret continued, gesturing toward the desk. "But these particular ones were meant specifically for you, to be given to you when you had children of your own and could truly understand what she wanted to say." William's legs felt weak, and he reached out to steady himself against the desk. "When she had children of her own," he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Margaret nodded, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "She knew she might not be there to see you become a father, but she wanted to make sure you knew how proud she was of the man you would become. She wrote these letters during her final months, pouring her heart into every word." William's hands shook as he looked at the bundle of letters. There were at least a dozen of them, each one carefully sealed and dated. The top letter was marked to be opened when William becomes a father. The next one read for William on his first child's first birthday. Each letter seemed to correspond to a different milestone in his life as a parent. "How is this possible?" William asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Where have these been all these years?" Margaret wiped her eyes with a delicate handkerchief. "Your mother gave them to me 3 weeks before she died. She made me promise to keep them safe and to deliver them to you when the time was right. She said she had a feeling that she wouldn't be around to see you become a father. She wanted to make sure you knew how much she loved you and how proud she was of you." The room fell silent except for the gentle ticking of the antique clock on the mantelpiece. William felt as though the world had stopped spinning. His mother had somehow reached out to him across the years, knowing exactly what he would need to hear as a father himself. "There's more," Margaret said softly, pointing to the leather journal. She wrote in that journal every day during her final months. It's full of her thoughts about you and Harry, her hopes for your futures, and her dreams of the kind of men you would become. She wrote about the children she hoped you would have and the kind of father she knew you would be. William picked up the journal with trembling hands. The leather was soft and worn, and he could feel the weight of all the words his mother had written inside. As he opened it to the first page, he saw her familiar handwriting. "For my darling William, the future king and the father I know you will be. You have always had the biggest heart, and I know you will raise your children with the same love and compassion that you have shown the world." Tears began to stream down William's face as he read his mother's words. It was as if she were speaking directly to him, comforting him in a way that only she could. The journal was filled with her observations about his character, her pride in his achievements, and her unwavering belief in his ability to be both a good king and a loving father. Margaret watched him quietly, her own tears falling steadily. "She loved you so much, Your Highness. Every day, she would talk about you and Harry, wondering what you were doing hoping you were happy. She worried about the pressures you would face as you grew older, but she never doubted that you would handle them with grace and dignity. William looked up from the journal, his eyes red with tears. Why now? Why are you giving these to me today? Margaret smiled through her tears. Because yesterday was Prince George's birthday, and your mother wrote specifically about wanting you two have these words of encouragement as you navigate the challenges of raising a future king. She knew how difficult it would be for you, having experienced those same challenges with you and Harry. William felt his knees buckle slightly, and he sank into his leather chair. The weight of his mother's love preserved across all these years was almost too much to bear. He had spent so many years missing her, wishing she could be there for the important moments in his life. And now he discovered that in many ways, she had been. She also wanted you to know, Margaret continued, that she believed you would be an even better father than she was a mother. She wrote that your natural compassion and your strong sense of duty would make you the perfect guide for your children as they grow up in the royal family. William buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions coursing through him, his mother's love, her wisdom, her hopes for his future. It was all there, preserved in her own handwriting, waiting for him to discover it at exactly the right moment in his life. William sat in silence for several minutes, clutching the journal to his chest, as if it were his mother herself. Margaret remained standing nearby, giving him the space he needed to process this incredible gift. The morning light continued to stream through the windows, casting everything in a golden glow that made the moment feel almost dreamlike. "Tell me about her final months," William said finally, his voice still shaky with emotion. "What was she like when she wrote these?" Margaret moved closer, her eyes softening with memory. "She was different during those last few months, Your Highness. More reflective, more aware of the precious nature of time. She would sit by her window for hours, writing in that journal. Sometimes she would cry as she wrote, but they were tears of love, not sadness. She said she was trying to capture every piece of wisdom she wanted to pass on to you and Harry." William opened the journal to a random page and began to read aloud, his voice breaking slightly. "My dearest William, today I watched a mother teaching her young son to ride a bicycle in the park. She was so patient, running alongside him, catching him when he wobbled, cheering when he succeeded. I realized that this is what I want for you, to be that kind of father. Patient and present, celebrating every small victory with your children." Margaret nodded, wiping fresh tears from her eyes. She wrote that entry after spending an afternoon at Hyde Park. She had been feeling discouraged about some of the criticism she was receiving in the press. But watching that mother with her child reminded her of what really mattered. She came home and wrote for hours that day. William continued reading, his voice growing stronger as he found comfort in his mother's words. She wrote, "I know the weight of royal duty will sometimes feel crushing, but remember that being a father is your most important job. The kingdom needs a king, but George, Charlotte, and Louis need their daddy even more." The mention of his children by name made William's heart skip a beat. How did she know their names? How could she have known? Margaret smiled mysteriously. "Your mother had a gift for seeing into the future, especially when it came to you and Harry. She would often tell me about dreams she had of your weddings, your children, your lives as grown men. She was remarkably accurate about many things. Ouch. She even described Kate to me years before you met her." William stared at Margaret in amazement. She knew about Catherine. She described a beautiful, intelligent woman with dark hair and a warm smile who would love you for who you are, not what you are. She said this woman would be your anchor, helping you balance your royal duties with your personal happiness. She called her the one who will complete you. William felt a new wave of emotion wash over him. His mother had somehow known about Catherine, had seen their future together, and had approved of the woman who would become his wife. It was almost too wonderful to believe. "There's something else," Margaret said, reaching into her handbag. "Left this for Catherine as well." She pulled out a small velvet box and placed it on the desk next to the letters. William opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was a delicate sapphire bracelet that matched his mother's engagement ring, the ring he had given to Catherine when he proposed. Tucked beneath the bracelet was a note in his mother's handwriting. For the woman who will love my son. As much as I do, welcome to the family, Catherine. Thank you for making William happy. William's composure finally broke completely. He put his head in his hands and sobbed, overwhelmed by the depth of his mother's love and foresight. Margaret moved closer and gently placed her hand on his shoulder, offering comfort in the way she had undoubtedly comforted his mother during her difficult times. She knew how much you would need her guidance as you raised your own children. Margaret said softly, she worried that you might doubt yourself, that you might feel unprepared for the challenges ahead. These letters and this journal were her way of staying with you, of continuing to be your mother, even though she couldn't be there physically. William looked up at Margaret, his eyes red but filled with gratitude. Why didn't anyone tell me about this before? Why didn't you come forward sooner? Margaret sighed deeply. She made me promise to wait until you were truly ready. She said I would know when the time was right. Yesterday, when I saw the photographs of Prince George's birthday party, I saw something in your eyes that reminded me so much of your mother. The same mixture of joy and responsibility. The same awareness of how precious and fleeting childhood is. I knew it was time. William stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where he had played as a child. Sometimes I worry that I'm not doing enough for them, that I'm not the father they deserve. The demands of royal life can be so consuming. That's exactly what your mother worried about, Margaret said, joining him at the window. She wrote extensively about the balance between duty and family. She believed that your love for your children would guide you to make the right choices, even when those choices are difficult. William turned to face Margaret, his expression serious. What else did she write? What other guidance did she leave for me? Margaret smiled and gestured toward the pile of letters. She wrote about everything, Your Highness. How to handle the children's first day of school. How to explain their royal heritage without making them feel burdened by it. How to teach them to use their privilege to help others. She even wrote about how to comfort them when they experience their first heartbreak. William shook his head in wonder. It's as if she knew exactly what I would need to hear at every stage of their lives. That's because she did, Margaret replied. Mothers have a special intuition about their children's futures, and your mother's intuition was particularly strong. She loved you so deeply that she found a way to continue mothering you even after she was gone. William walked back to his desk and carefully picked up the first letter, the one marked for when he became a father. May I read this one now? Margaret nodded. She hoped you would read them all, in order, whenever you felt ready. She said they would mean more to you if you'd read them when you truly needed her words. With reverent care, William opened the first letter and began to read his mother's final gift to him. Words of love and wisdom that would guide him through the most important job of his life. William carefully unfolded the first letter, his hands still trembling slightly. The paper was cream-colored and bore the distinctive watermark of his mother's personal stationery. As he began to read, his mother's voice seemed to come alive in the room. My darling William, he read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. If you are reading this, then you have become a father, and my heart is bursting with pride, even though I cannot be there to see it. I have dreamed of this moment since the day you were born, imagining the kind of father you would become. William paused, looking up at Margaret, who nodded encouragingly. He continued reading, his voice growing stronger with each word. I know you will doubt yourself sometimes. I know you will lie awake at night wondering if you are doing enough, if you are being the father your children deserve. Let me ease your mind. My sweet boy, you are already exactly the father they need simply because you love them so much that you worry about being good enough. Tears streamed down William's face as he absorbed his mother's words. It was as if she had seen directly into his heart, understanding every fear and insecurity he had experienced since becoming a father. Remember when you were 6 years old, and you insisted on helping me care for the baby birds that fell from their nest in the garden? The letter continued. You were so gentle, so careful, so determined to make sure they were safe. That is the same tenderness you will show your children every day. That is the same protection you will provide them throughout their lives. William remembered that day vividly. He had been so worried about those tiny creatures, checking on them every hour, making sure they had enough food and warmth. His mother had been so patient with his constant questions and concerns. "The world will tell you that being a prince is your most important role," he read on. "But I want you to know that being a father is your greatest calling. Kings are remembered for their reigns, but fathers are remembered for their love. Your children will not care about your titles or your duties. They will only care that you are present for them, that you listen to them, and that you love them unconditionally." Margaret wiped her eyes as she watched William read. She wrote, "That particular passage after a difficult day when the press had been particularly harsh about her parenting choices, she said she realized that the only opinions that mattered were yours and Harry's." William looked up from the letter. She was such a wonderful mother. "I hope I can be half as good to my children as she was to Harry and me." "You already are," Margaret assured him. "Your mother would be so proud of the father you have become." She wrote about her confidence in you throughout the journal. William returned to the letter, reading about his mother's hopes for his future family. She wrote about the importance of creating traditions, of making ordinary moments special, of teaching his children to find joy in simple things. She encouraged him to trust his instincts and to remember that love was more important than perfection. There'll be times when the pressures of royal life feel overwhelming. The letter continued, and you will be tempted to sacrifice family time for duty. Please remember that your first duty is to your children. The kingdom needs a king, but George, Charlotte, and Louis need their father more. William stopped reading and looked at Margaret with amazement. She knew their names. She actually knew what I would name my children. Margaret smiled through her tears. She spent hours talking about her future grandchildren. She would describe them to me in such detail, their personalities, their interests, even their physical features. She said George would be sensitive and thoughtful like you, Charlotte would be spirited and independent like her, and Louis would be the peacemaker who brings joy to everyone around him. William shook his head in wonder. His mother's descriptions were remarkably accurate. George was indeed sensitive and thoughtful, always concerned about others' feelings. Charlotte was spirited and independent, never hesitating to speak her mind. And Louis, though still young, already showed signs of being the family's little comedian, able to make everyone laugh, even during difficult moments. She also wrote about Catherine, Margaret continued. She said Catherine would be the perfect mother for your children because she understood the balance between normalcy and royalty. She admired Catherine's strength and her ability to remain grounded despite the pressures of royal life. William felt a surge of warmth thinking about his wife. Catherine had indeed been everything his mother had envisioned, and more. She had brought stability and joy to his life. She was an incredible mother to their children. He continued reading the letter, which went on to offer specific advice about parenting in the royal family. His mother wrote about the importance of giving the children space to be themselves, of not letting protocol overshadow their childhood, and of teaching them that their privilege came with responsibility to help others. Take them to visit the homeless shelters and food banks, she wrote. Let them see how fortunate they are and how they can use their position to make a difference. But also take them to the park, to the cinema, to ordinary places where they can just be children. They need both experiences to become well-rounded adults. William smiled as he read this passage. He and Catherine had been doing exactly that, trying to give their children both a sense of duty and a normal childhood. His mother's guidance confirmed that they were on the right path. The letter concluded with a paragraph that made William's heart ache with love and longing. My darling son, I may not be there to hold your babies or to comfort you when parenting feels difficult, but my love for you transcends death. Every time you hold your children, know that I am holding you. Every time you comfort them, know that I am comforting you. Every time you feel overwhelmed by the responsibility of raising them, remember that you are not alone. I will always be with you, guiding you, loving you, and cheering you on from wherever I am. William folded the letter carefully and placed it back on the desk, his heart full of his mother's love and wisdom. He looked at Margaret, who had been watching him with the tender expression of someone who had loved his mother deeply. She really did think of everything, didn't she? William said softly. Margaret nodded. She loved you so much, Your Highness. Everything she did during those final months was motivated by her desire to continue being your mother even after she was gone. She wanted to make sure you knew how proud she was of you and how confident she was in your ability to be a wonderful father. William picked up the second letter, marked for his first child's first birthday. "These are the most precious gifts I have ever received," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for keeping them safe all these years. You for waiting until exactly the right moment to give them to me." Margaret reached into her handbag once more and pulled out a small photo album bound in soft blue leather. "There's one more thing," she said, her voice gentle but filled with excitement. "Your mother created this for you as well." William took the album with reverence, as if it were made of the most delicate glass. The cover was embossed with the words "for William's children" in his mother's elegant handwriting. As he opened it, he gasped softly at what he saw. The first page contained a photograph of Princess Diana holding baby William, both of them laughing at something off camera. Beneath it, in her careful script, she had written, "The day you were born, I knew what it meant to have your heart walking around outside your body. Now you will understand this feeling too." William traced his finger over the photograph, remembering the warmth of his mother's embrace, the sound of her laughter, the way she could make any moment feel magical. "I haven't seen this photo in years," he whispered. "She kept copies of all her favorite pictures," Margaret explained. "She said she wanted your children to know their grandmother through these images and the stories that went with them." Ba-da-da-da. William turned the page and found a picture of Diana teaching a young Harry to ride a bicycle, her face beaming with pride as she ran alongside him. The caption read, "Teaching Harry to ride his bike. One day, you will have this same joy with your own children." The pride a parent feels in these moments is indescribable. Page after page revealed treasured family moments William had nearly forgotten. There was Diana reading bedtime stories to both boys, her voice animated as she brought the characters to life. There was a photo of her teaching William to tie his shoes, both of them sitting on the floor of his nursery, completely absorbed in the task. Each image was accompanied by a note about the memory and how it related to his future role as a father. She spent weeks selecting these photographs, Margaret said, watching William's face as he turned each page. She wanted to choose images that would help you remember not just her, but the feeling of being loved unconditionally by a parent. She said that would be the most important gift she could give you as you started your own family. William paused at a photograph that took his breath away. It showed Diana kneeling at his level, her hands on his shoulders, looking directly into his eyes, with an expression of pure love and understanding. He couldn't have been more than 8 years old, and his face showed the trust and adoration he had felt for his mother. "This is exactly how I want to be with my children," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Present, attentive, making them feel like they are the most important people in the world." "And you are?" Margaret assured him. "I have seen the photographs of you with Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. You have the same expression in your eyes that your mother had in hers, the same complete devotion." William continued through the album, finding pictures from family vacations, birthday parties, quiet moments at home, and public appearances where Diana had managed to make even formal occasions feel warm and loving. Each image told a story of a mother who had been completely present for her children despite the enormous pressures of royal life. Near the end of the album, William found a section titled "Dreams for the Future." These pages contained images Diana had collected from magazines and newspapers, pictures of families playing in parks, fathers teaching their sons to play football, mothers braiding their daughters' hair. She had created a collage of the ordinary moments she hoped William would experience with his own children. She said she wanted you to see that being royal didn't mean you couldn't have a normal family life, Margaret explained. She believed you could give your children both the privilege of their heritage and the joy of simple pleasures. The final page of the album contained a letter addressed to William's future children. William's hand shook as he read it aloud. "To my beautiful grandchildren, though I will never hold you in my arms, I hold you in my heart. Your father is the most wonderful man I know, and he will be the most wonderful father you could ask for. He will teach you to be kind, to be brave, to use your gifts to help others. He will show you that being royal is not about being better than others, but about serving others." And most importantly, he will love you with the same fierce, protective love that I have for him. You are so blessed to have him as your father, and I know he is blessed to have you as his children. Be good to each other, take care of each other, and always remember that you are loved beyond measure." William closed the album and held it against his chest, overwhelmed by the depth of his mother's love and the thoughtfulness of her gift. "She thought of everything," he said, his voice full of wonder. "Even grandchildren she would never meet." Margaret smiled through her tears. "She said that love transcends death, and that she would find a way to be part of your children's lives. Even if she couldn't be there physically, she wanted them to know that they had a grandmother who loved them before they were even born." William looked at the collection of letters, the journal, the photograph album, and the bracelet for Catherine. "These gifts, they're not just memories, they're guidance. They're her way of continuing to be my mother." "Exactly," Margaret agreed. She knew that being a parent in the royal family would present unique challenges, and she wanted to make sure you had her wisdom to guide you through them. She also knew that there would be moments when you would doubt yourself, when you would need reassurance that you were doing the right thing. William picked up the journal and opened it to a random page. His mother's words jumped out at him. "I watch William playing with the children at the hospital today, and I am so proud of the man he is becoming. He has such a natural way with children, such patience and kindness. He will be an extraordinary father because he already understands that the most important gift you can give a child is your complete attention and unconditional love." "She saw it in me even then," William said softly, "the father I would become." Nodded. "She saw it because it was already there. Your capacity for love, your dedication to duty, your desire to make a difference in the world. These are the qualities of the way that make you both a good prince and a good father. She knew that your children would bring out the best in you, just as you and Harry brought out the best in her." William stood up and walked to the window again, looking out at the garden where his own children now played when they visited. "I wish she could see them," he said quietly. "I wish she could know George and Charlotte and Louis." "Margaret." "She does see them," Margaret said with quiet conviction. "Through you. Every time you read them a story, every time you comfort them when they're sad, every time you teach them something new, she is there. Her love lives on in the way you love them." William turned back to Margaret, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "How can I ever thank you for keeping these safe, for waiting until exactly the right moment to give them to me?" Margaret smiled and moved toward the door. "Seeing the joy and peace in your eyes right now is thanks enough. Your mother would be so happy to know that her words have brought you comfort. That was all she ever wanted, to continue being your mother in whatever way she could." As Margaret prepared to leave, William felt a sudden urgency to keep her there just a little longer. She was his last living connection to his mother's final months, and he had so many questions he wanted to ask. "Please stay a few more minutes," he said, gesturing toward the chairs by the fireplace. "Tell me more about those last months. What was she like? What did she hope for?" Margaret settled into the chair across from him, her eyes distant with memory. "She was at peace during those final weeks, Your Highness. I know that might sound strange, given everything that was happening in her life. But she had found a sense of purpose in preparing these gifts for you and Harry. She would wake up early every morning and spend hours writing, always with a cup of tea and classical music playing softly in the background." William leaned forward, hanging on every word. "What did she write about?" "Everything," Margaret said with a soft smile. "She wrote about her childhood, her hopes for your future, her regrets about the mistakes she had made. She wrote about the lessons she had learned and the wisdom she wanted to pass on to you. But mostly, she wrote about love, her love for you and Harry, her love for the people she served, her love for life itself." Margaret reached into her handbag one final time and pulled out a single envelope, this one marked simply for William. In Catherine's wedding day, she handed it to William with trembling hands. "She made me promise to give this to you on your wedding day, but I thought, given everything that has happened today, perhaps now is the right time." William took the envelope with reverence. The paper was slightly yellowed with age, but the seal was still intact. He opened it carefully and unfolded the letter inside. "My dearest William," he read aloud, his voice thick with emotion. Today you are marrying the woman of your dreams, and I am watching from wherever love goes when it leaves this world. I have seen Catherine in my dreams, and I know she is perfect for you. She has the strength to stand beside you through anything, the wisdom to guide you when you need direction, and the love to heal the parts of your heart that have been broken. William paused, overwhelmed by his mother's words. He could almost feel her presence in the room, as if she were sitting right beside him on his wedding day. I know I cannot be there to adjust your tie or to tell you how handsome you look in your uniform, he continued reading. But I want you to know that I will be there in spirit, celebrating with you as you begin this new chapter of your life. Catherine will be the most beautiful bride, not just because of her appearance, but because of the joy and love that will radiate from her as she walks down the aisle to you. Margaret wiped tears from her eyes as she watched William read. Wrote that letter the night before she died, she said softly. She stayed up until dawn, determined to finish it. She said she could see your wedding so clearly in her mind, and she didn't want to leave anything unsaid. William looked up in amazement. The night before she died? Margaret nodded. She had such clarity that night, such peace. She told me that she could see both you and Harry as grown men, successful and happy, and that gave her the strength to let go. She said her job as your mother was complete because she had loved you enough to last a lifetime. William returned to the letter, his voice breaking as he read the final paragraph. Remember, and my darling boy, that love is the only thing that truly matters. Not titles, not wealth, not public opinion, just love. Catherine, with all your heart. Love your children with all your soul, and love yourself enough to be happy. That is my final gift to you, permission to be completely, utterly happy. You deserve every joy life has to offer. The room fell silent as William finished reading. Both he and Margaret sat quietly, surrounded by the weight of Princess Diana's enduring love and the power of her final words to her son. She was right about Catherine, William said finally, his voice filled with wonder. She was right about everything. Our wedding day was exactly as she described it. Catherine was radiant. I could feel a presence there with us that I couldn't quite explain at the time. Margaret smiled. Your mother had a gift for seeing into people's hearts. She knew that Catherine would make you happy because she recognized the same qualities in Catherine that she had hoped to find in her own life. Authenticity, kindness, and unwavering loyalty. William carefully folded the wedding letter and placed it with the others. Wow. These letters, this journal, the photograph album, they're more than gifts. They're proof that love really does transcend death. They're evidence that a mother's love is powerful enough to reach across time and space to comfort her child. Margaret stood up, recognizing that her mission was complete. Your mother would be so proud of the man you have become, the husband. You are too, Catherine, and the father you are to your children. She would be proud that you have found a way to balance your royal duties with your personal happiness. William stood as well and walked Margaret to the door. I don't know how to thank you for keeping these safe all these years. Could have given them to me at any time, but you waited until I truly needed them. Margaret paused at the doorway and looked back at him. Your mother taught me that timing is everything. She said that wisdom given too early falls on deaf ears, but wisdom given at the right moment can change everything. I believe today was the right moment. As Margaret left, William returned to his desk and carefully arranged all of his mother's gifts, the letters, the journal, the photograph album, and the bracelet for Catherine. Each item represented a different aspect of his mother's love and wisdom. He opened the journal once more and read the final entry. Written in his mother's shaky handwriting during her last hours, my work here is done. I have loved my boys as completely as any mother could love her children. They are ready to face the world without me, but they will never be without my love. Now that love will live on in the way they love their own children, in the kindness they show to others, and in the joy they find in simple moments. I am not leaving them. I am becoming part of who they are. William closed the journal and pressed it to his heart. For the first time since his mother's death, he felt completely at peace. She had found a way to stay with him, to continue guiding him, to keep loving him across the years. The letters would provide comfort during difficult times. The journal would offer wisdom when he needed direction. And the photograph album would remind his children that they had a grandmother who loved them before they were even born. As he sat in his study, surrounded by his mother's final gifts, William realized that the door he had opened that morning had led to so much more than he could have imagined. It had opened the door to healing, to understanding, and to the continuation of a love that would never end. He picked up his phone to call Catherine, to share this incredible experience with her and to give her the bracelet his mother had chosen especially for her. Today had begun as an ordinary morning, but it had become one of the most extraordinary days of his life, the day he discovered that his mother's love was still as present and powerful as ever, wrapped in letters, preserved in photographs, written in the pages of a journal. It would guide him for the rest of his life. The morning sun continued to shine through the windows of his study, but now it seemed to shine with a different quality, warmer, more golden, as if it carried with it the light of his mother's enduring love. William had opened a door and found not just letters and photographs, but the most precious gift of all, the knowledge that he was still and would always be his mother's beloved son.